She woke up the next morning to a terrifying stomach pain and complained to her father Tamba, who took her to the village healer. Hawa, on hearing this, laughed as she knew that it was her charm at work. She could not wait to see Kadi with her protruding stomach, which would make everyone believe that she was pregnant. Once upon a time, in the small village of Panguma, lived a man named Tamba who had two daughters. His first daughter, Kadi, was born from his first wife, who died shortly after giving birth to her. His second daughter, Geneva, was born from his second wife, Hawa, who was a woman known for being so cunning and wicked. Her envy had unconsciously seeped into her daughter, Geneva, who grew up with a deep-seated jealousy towards her half-sister Kadi, who was not only beautiful but kind. Her beauty drew so much attention to her, with several men coming forward to pledge their interest in marrying her. However, her father was not so keen to marry her off to any man because of the promise he made to his friend a long time ago that his daughter would marry his only son. Tamba and his friend Kaba agreed that their children would get married in the future to solidify their friendship and strengthen the bond between the families. At the time, Tamba had only one daughter, Kadi, who he envisioned as his friend's son's wife. However, when he discussed this with his wife Hawa, she disagreed, saying that Geneva was also his daughter and that Tamba should allow the young man choose who he wanted to marry. She did this because Kaba's son Lamin, who lived most of his life abroad, was soon returning to marry his bride and take her back with him. Hawa could not stand the thought of her stepdaughter Kadi moving abroad, so she decided to do everything possible to ensure that her only daughter Geneva marries Lamin and relocates abroad with him. Lamin was a tall and handsome man who had been abroad for so many years, studying and building a life for himself. Upon his return, his father informed him of the promise he made to his friend a long time ago, and Lamin agreed to fulfill the promise of his father. His return to the village caused a stir, and both sisters were so eager to meet him. When Kaba brought Lamin to Tamba's house, everyone was extremely excited. Lamin was to choose his bride from among Tamba's two daughters and was advised to converse with the two sisters to decide who would be his bride. Hawa, without wasting any time, introduced her daughter Geneva to Lamin. She could not risk him meeting Kadi first because she knew what would happen if he did. So, she did everything within her power to push her daughter Geneva to him so that they could build a connection first before he even meets Kadi. Lamin and Geneva began to spend so much time together, getting to know one another. They seemed to have a connection, and Geneva could already see herself marrying Lamin. He was so soft-spoken and refined, with an accent that seemed to calm her every nerve. For days, Lamin visited their home just to spend time with Geneva. Her mother was so delighted to see that her plan had worked. However, her joy was cut short when Lamin got to meet her stepsister Kadi. Their connection was instant. As Lamin switched all his attention to Kadi, they spent hours talking and laughing, and this got Geneva extremely jealous to see the man that she wanted spending time with her half-sister. She accused Kadi of snatching her man one evening and warned her to stay away from Lamin. Filled with anger, Geneva approached her mother Hawa, who decided to teach Kadi a lesson for trying to take Lamin away from her daughter. She visited an evil woman in the forest and requested for a charm to make Kadi's stomach to gradually grow big. Hawa hoped to use this to accuse Kadi of being pregnant out of wedlock. She knew that Lamin would refuse to marry Kadi if he realized that she was pregnant for another man. The evil woman gave her a substance to spray in Kadi's room to ensure that only Kadi inhales the substance. Hawa returned home and could not wait to see Kadi suffer. She snuck into Kadi's room one early morning and sprayed the substance, ensuring that she doesn't inhale it herself. After successfully doing this, she left the room and waited patiently to see the result of her evil plot. Days passed, but nothing seemed to have happened. This troubled Hawa, who visited the evil woman again and was told that the charm had worked, but that it might take a bit of time to show. Hawa returned home that evening, hoping that the effect of the charm shows up soon before Lamin declares his interest in marrying Kadi. As the days went by, Lamin continued to visit their home, requesting to see Kadi, and one evening, her sister Geneva, out of jealousy, lied to Lamin that Kadi was not home. She used this opportunity to spend some time with Lamin, who seemed to enjoy her company. However, Geneva could not help but think that Lamin was only being polite to her by feigning his interest in their conversation. The thought of this infuriated her greatly, as she decided to ensure that Lamin never ends up with her half-sister Kadi. She accepted her fate that Lamin would never choose her above Kadi and decided to ensure that he doesn't choose Kadi either. To her, it was better none of them married him than she leaving Lamin for her sister Kadi. So Geneva decided to tarnish the reputation of her half-sister in the eyes of Lamin. She paid off a woman who approached Lamin to inform him that Kadi was a prostitute who slept with her married brother. The woman narrated to Lamin how Kadi secretly slept with men in the village for money. She told him that if he was in doubt, he should visit a certain place in the village at night and that he will find Kadi there. Lamin could not believe his ears. He waited till nightfall and paid a visit to the spot where the woman had told him to visit, and to his surprise, he found Kadi there. Disappointed, Lamin returned home without saying a word. He visited their home the next day, but instead of requesting to see Kadi as he usually did, he asked to see Geneva instead. For days, Lamin and Geneva spent time together, and her mother Hawa was so delighted to see her daughter with Lamin. The thought of her daughter moving abroad filled her with so much joy. Kadi, on the other hand, could not understand why Lamin was suddenly ignoring her. She tried to talk to him on several occasions, but Lamin did not seem to want to talk to her. Her sister Geneva advised her to stop being desperate for a man who clearly did not want her. She warned Kadi to stay away from Lamin, or else she would tell the entire village that she was trying to snatch her man. Kadi returned to her room sad, as she wondered what could have gone wrong. She woke up the next morning to a terrifying stomach pain and complained to her father Tamba, who took her to the village healer. Hawa, on hearing this, laughed, as she knew that it was her charm at work. She could not wait to see Kadi with her protruding stomach, which would make everyone believe that she was pregnant. Her daughter Geneva was so delighted, as her plan of marrying Lamin was finally coming together successfully. It was only a few days to the day that Lamin had set to choose his bride, and Geneva could not wait to see the look on Kadi's face when Lamin would announce her as his bride. The thought filled her with so much joy as she waited in anticipation. The morning finally arrived, and Geneva woke up excited. She stood up from her bed and began to prepare, as Lamin promised to visit that morning. After a few hours, her mother rushed in to inform her that Lamin had arrived. She told her to remain in her room till she is called, as she left Geneva to go join her husband and Lamin in the living room. After a few minutes, they heard a loud scream in Geneva's room and rushed to check what had happened. To their surprise, Hawa realized that her daughter's stomach had grown extremely big. She looked heavily pregnant, and Hawa found it confusing because she thought the charm had worked on her stepdaughter Kadi. What she did not know was that on the day when she sprayed the charm in Kadi's room, her daughter Geneva was in Kadi's room looking for anything that she could find to use against Kadi. Once she heard the room door open, she rushed to hide, thinking that it was Kadi. Little did she know that it was her mother who came into the room to spray a charm. Once her mother left, she hurriedly walked out of the room, inhaling the charm meant for Kadi. All the while, Hawa never knew that the charm was working in her daughter. Her stepdaughter Kadi, who she thought was going through pain because of the charm, was only suffering from an allergic reaction. Hawa watched in dismay as her daughter cried out in pain. Everyone, including Lamin, stood there and watched as Geneva cried. Her father Tamba, confused as to what was happening, decided to call on a healer. The healer arrived their home and immediately saw all that had happened. She pointed her finger at Hawa, saying that Hawa had allowed her envy and jealousy to ruin her daughter's life. She said that if Hawa failed to confess, her daughter Geneva would die. The healer then went on to reveal that Geneva too could only be healed if her heart is pure, and that if Geneva fails to purge herself of all the evil in her heart by confessing, the healing would not work and she would die of the pain. The entire place went silent as Hawa began to confess all the horrible things she did to Kadi. She admitted to plotting against Kadi out of envy, detailing how she visited the evil woman in the forest and sprayed a charm in Kadi's room, which was meant to make her look pregnant so as to ensure that she never married Lamin. Everyone looked at Hawa in shock as they never believed that she was capable of such evil. The healer then turned to Geneva to ask if she had anything to confess, and Geneva revealed to them that she set Kadi up to ensure that she never ended up with Lamin. She confessed to paying a woman who lied to Lamin that Kadi was a prostitute who slept with her married brother. She told the woman to tell Lamin that Kadi always went to a certain place at night. She knew that Lamin would visit the said place to find out the truth, so she told Kadi that Lamin told her to meet him up at the exact spot to ensure that Lamin saw her there that night. Lamin could not believe his ears as he listened to Geneva's confession. His heart ached for Kadi, who had been wronged so grievously by her own family. He walked up to Kadi, who had just returned from the healer's hut, to hear their terrifying confessions. She stood in the corner broken as Lamin walked up to her to apologize for believing all the lies. He pleaded for her forgiveness, promising to never let her down. Kadi, filled with so much emotions, forgave him, and Lamin asked her to be his wife. Hawa could not believe how things backfired. She watched as Kadi accepted to marry Lamin and regretted all the evil that she had done. Hawa and her daughter Geneva asked Kadi to forgive them, and Kadi forgave them because she knew that holding on to anger will only poison her good heart. The healer then proceeded with the healing. She gave Geneva a potion to drink to purge the evil from her heart, and Geneva took the potion from the healer and gulped it down her throat. Immediately, the swelling in her stomach began to subside as the pain eased off gently. That was how Kadi got married to Lamin and left the country with him as his wife. They built their life together and lived happily ever after. Geneva, however, remained in the village, single, as no man came for her hand in marriage because of the stigma she brought upon herself. She spent her days regretting her actions as she hoped to be married someday. The lesson to be learned from this story is that envy and malice can do so much destruction in life. It is important to foster love and understanding and to always seek the truth before jumping into conclusions. The true character of a man is not built on perfection, but in the willingness to acknowledge one's mistakes and strive to be better. Therefore, it is important to forgive others for their wrongs, as not doing so would only poison one's own heart